At 10:42 on a Tuesday morning, my husband's lawyer put two versions of my housewarming on the courtroom screen. Mine lasted 41 seconds, his lasted 53 minutes. Tell me which one you would trust, the clip millions had already watched, or a file saved by a man fighting to keep his house. I had removed setup, pauses, and private chatter because none of that changed the threat at the end. The short clip showed my ex telling the truth and my husband proving he could not take it. Meredith asked the judge to start at minute 1, and I was certain more footage could only make my husband look weaker. Half the internet had already agreed with me. My name is Kendra Lawson. I was 36, and I worked as the public information officer for a county government in Ohio. My job was to decide which fact belonged in the first paragraph and which fact could wait until page 4. People called that clarity when an office did it. They called it manipulation when a wife did. I believed the first version usually won. That belief began when I was 14. My father lost his job after a contract dispute, and the local paper used a photograph of him carrying a cardboard box to his car. It did not show the closed factory or the 6 months he worked without full pay. It showed one tired man and a box. At school, that image became our whole family. My mother kept saying the article lacked context. Nobody cared. Context arrived after the picture. Garrett knew that story. He also knew why our new house mattered to me, though it mattered to him in a different way. Garrett Lawson was 38 and managed restoration projects for older homes. He had grown up moving between his mother, an aunt, and 2 rented apartments where every wall had to remain the landlord's colour. The brick house on Hawthorne Lane was the first property with his name on it. We spent 14 months repairing plaster, replacing pipes, and arguing over whether the front door should be blue or black. We were good during the work. Every Sunday morning, Garrett made coffee and walked through the rooms with me. He listened when I described what the house could become. I held the tape measure while he marked walls with white chalk. The quiet man became easy to read when something physical needed saving. He was harder to reach when the damage had no crack or stain. We had been together 9 years and married 7. By the 5th year, Garrett had stopped arguing in real time. If I said something sharp at dinner, he waited until the drive home. If a friend crossed a line, he studied the room before deciding whether to speak. He called that keeping private matters private. I called it leaving me alone to manage every difficult moment. That was the part of my complaint that was true. The recording system began with a contractor dispute 6 months before the housewarming. A flooring company denied scratching 3 original boards. Garrett had filmed the work before and after, but the clips were scattered across our phones. After that, he created a house archive. Any video marked with our address automatically sent its first full version to a protected account before edits reached the shared album. He showed me the system in the unfinished living room. A small red dot appeared beside a running time code. Garrett explained that the first upload stayed complete even if someone changed or deleted the copy we used later. I told him no normal person needed permanent evidence of a flaw. He said people remembered damage differently when money or blame entered the room. The red dot became one more example of Garrett preparing for a problem instead of trusting a conversation. Trevor Hale agreed with me about that. Trevor was my former boyfriend and, according to me, a friend of the family. We had dated for 2 years in college. He was confident, fast with names, and good at turning a quiet table toward him. The relationship ended because neither of us knew how to live without an audience. Years later, that seemed like proof we belonged better as friends. Garrett never believed the word friend explained enough. I compared them in small ways at first. Trevor would have chosen a restaurant without studying reviews. Trevor could speak to strangers without planning an exit. Trevor would not let a room become uncomfortable and then wait until the car to mention it. Garrett asked me to stop after a dinner at my sister's house. Trevor had told a story about talking us into a sold-out concert in college. I added that Garrett would still be outside, checking the ticket policy. Everyone laughed except my husband. On the drive home, Garrett asked why Trevor had to appear whenever I wanted to describe something Garrett lacked. I told him comparisons only hurt when they were accurate. His eyes moved to the passing houses before coming back to the road. He said Trevor was allowed to remain in our circle because Garrett trusted me to protect the marriage where he could not. I heard a request for control. I did not hear the trust. 3 months later, Trevor helped us move a stone sink into the new house. He brought beer for the workers, told stories, and called Garrett the only man he knew who could turn owning a home into an inspection appointment. Garrett did not answer in front of the crew. That evening, he asked me not to invite Trevor into the house again without discussing it first. I agreed because the request sounded temporary. Then I planned the housewarming. The invitation list reached 42 people. Family, county co-workers, neighbours, and several friends from college filled the first page. Trevor's name went on it before Garrett saw the list. Garrett found the invitation on our shared calendar. He stood beneath the new dining room light and asked whether Trevor had already accepted. I said he had, and I reminded Garrett that Trevor had carried half our furniture inside. Excluding him now would look insecure and ungrateful. Garrett looked around the dining room before he answered. His attention passed over the restored trim, the table we bought together, and the doorway where Trevor had laughed at him. He said the house was the first place he wanted to feel safe from being treated like another man's lesser version. I told him a safe home could not be built by banning people who made him uncomfortable. That answer settled the guest list because Garrett stopped speaking. Mallory Reed loved the decision. She worked with me in county communications and treated every private conflict like material for a campaign. Mallory had never met Trevor, but she knew years of stories about him. She said a secure husband would welcome the man who came before him because the husband had already won. The word won mattered. It turned a marriage into a result people could measure. At lunch the next day, I told Mallory I wanted the housewarming to show Garrett that our friends did not see Trevor as a threat. She suggested a game after dinner. Something loud enough to make everyone relax. Truth or dare came from me. Trevor and I met at a coffee shop 2 evenings before the party. I told Garrett I was reviewing the catering order with Mallory. That was the first lie attached to the game. Trevor asked whether Garrett knew we were meeting. I told him Garrett knew Trevor was invited and did not control my calendar. Then I described the question. When Trevor chose truth, I would ask for the biggest mistake I made after our breakup. Trevor would look at Garrett and give the answer I had already selected. Trevor laughed, then asked how far I expected him to go. I said he should be honest about the comparisons he had heard from me. Garrett kept pretending my complaints were private moods. I wanted him to hear another man say them where he could not reduce them to my emotions. Trevor said calling a husband a mistake inside his new home was not a small joke. I told him the size of the reaction would belong to Garrett. Mallory joined us by video for 10 minutes. She suggested filming the game so nobody could later soften what happened. She said the internet loved a husband who could take a joke and punished one who could not. Trevor asked what would happen if Garrett walked out. I explained that leaving would prove he was sulking. Anger would be even clearer. Either way, the camera would give us something honest. Trevor smiled after that. Not because he felt comfortable, because he liked being the test. At home, Garrett was labeling cables beneath the television. I told him I wanted him to film the housewarming from guest arrivals through the game. His phone had the better camera, and his hands were steadier than mine. He suggested putting the phone on a tripod. I said I wanted movement, reactions, and close faces. A tripod would make the party look dead. Garrett asked why he had to spend his own housewarming behind a screen. I told him filming was his strength. He liked facts. I was giving him a useful role. The sentence landed harder than I intended, but I did not take it back. He checked the battery, cleared storage, and opened the house archive. The red dot appeared in the corner. Garrett reminded me that a continuous recording created a continuous original. If I wanted short social clips later, we could copy them from the full file. I told him the county communications officer understood editing. His gaze moved from my face to the room behind me, as if he expected another witness to explain what I would not. Then he agreed to film. The plan was ready. Paige Ward arrived first on the night of the housewarming. She had worked with Garrett on 2 restoration projects and had become a real friend to both of us. Paige was quiet around conflict because her parents had used her as a messenger during their divorce. Silence was not approval for her. It was an old survival habit. She brought a small lemon tree for the sunroom and asked where Garrett wanted it. I answered before he did. By 7, the house was full. Music moved through the restored rooms. People touched the old brick fireplace and praised the blue front door I had chosen. Garrett filmed each arrival. The red dot stayed lit while he walked from the porch to the dining room. Trevor came at 7:18 with a bottle of bourbon and no gift for the house. He hugged me first. Then he shook Garrett's hand and praised the work as if he were inspecting something Garrett had built for all of us. I placed Trevor beside Garrett at dinner. During the first course, I showed photographs from college on the television. Trevor appeared in 6 of them. In one, he held me on his shoulders after a football game. I said Garrett had never carried me like that because he treated fun as a safety violation. The table laughed. Garrett kept the phone aimed at the screen, then moved it toward the guests. His eyes checked the red dot before they found mine. He asked whether the old photographs were necessary at our housewarming. I told him the house held both our histories, not only the parts that made him comfortable. Mallory lifted her glass and praised mature friendship. Paige looked down at her plate. At 8:06, I asked Garrett to record a tour of the finished first floor before the game. He moved through the hall while I described the plaster, the floors, and the stone sink Trevor had helped carry. After the tour, Garrett set the phone against a bookend on the fireplace mantel. The red dot remained visible. He went to bring more chairs from the garage. Trevor stood beside me near the mantel. I reminded him that when he chose truth, he should not soften the answer. I said I needed Garrett's real reaction this time. Trevor asked whether I would stop him if Garrett tried to leave. I told him we would call Garrett offended if he left. If he became angry, the footage would be better. Neither of us looked at the phone. Garrett returned carrying 2 chairs. He picked up the device, checked the time code, and continued filming. We formed a loose circle in the living room. Mallory took charge of the first rounds. A neighbor admitted she hated the color of her husband's new car. Paige completed a dare by calling her brother and singing one line from an old song. The game felt harmless because harmlessness makes preparation invisible. At 8:31, the turn reached Trevor. He chose truth. I asked what he believed was the greatest mistake I had made after our breakup. Trevor looked across the circle at Garrett. Then he said the mistake was sitting directly opposite him. The room laughed in pieces. Mallory laughed first. 2 college friends followed. Paige did not. Garrett kept filming. I told Trevor not to hide inside a punchline. I asked what he honestly thought of my husband. Trevor looked at me before answering. That glance offered one last chance to reduce the plan. I nodded. He began with Garrett's confidence. He said Garrett behaved like a man waiting for his wife to discover she had settled. He called him a safe replacement chosen after Kendra became tired of exciting men. The laughter grew because the first insult sounded prepared but not dangerous. Garrett lowered the phone slightly and asked whether that was enough. I told him to keep recording. I said ending the game because he disliked the answer would prove Trevor's point. The red dot remained in the corner. Trevor moved to Garrett's work. He said a man who spent his life repairing other people's houses probably understood that some structures were already beyond saving. A county co-worker added that Garrett looked like a tenant asking permission to sit in his own living room. Mallory asked if Trevor wanted Garrett's chair beside me. More laughter. Garrett asked a second time for the game to stop. He kept his voice level. He said the housewarming was finished if the purpose was to make one person small inside his own home. I told him not to turn discomfort into a command. Then I asked him to move closer to Trevor and keep Trevor's face in the center. He did it. That obedience excited the room. People decided Garrett was participating because the camera still moved where I directed it. Trevor said Garrett had received a wife only because she became tired of real men. He claimed I never stopped comparing them because part of me still needed proof that choosing Garrett had not been a mistake. The line was the sharpest one we planned. It also carried a piece of truth I had not wanted Trevor to own. The laughter thinned. Trevor looked at me again. He said perhaps the game had gone far enough. I asked why he was protecting Garrett now. I reminded him that truth meant truth. Garrett moved the phone away from Trevor. For the third time, he asked me to end the game and send people home. He said we could discuss every real complaint after the room was empty. I took the phone from his hand, turned it back toward Trevor, and then returned it to Garrett. I told him to film the guests too. Their reactions mattered. Paige stood and said she was no longer comfortable being part of the joke. Mallory told her nobody was trapped in the room. Paige picked up her coat but did not leave. She moved to the hall and raised her own phone. I assumed she was filming the drama because even uncomfortable people liked evidence. Trevor sat in Garrett's chair beside me for a group photograph. Someone called Garrett the temporary winner. Another guest told him to smile so people would know he understood the game. Garrett did not smile. He held the phone steady for another 11 seconds. Then he said there was no need to worry about losing the words because he would keep every one of them. I heard a weak attempt at intimidation. I told the room Garrett always sounded serious when he had no answer. Then I said the best part of filming was that people could decide for themselves. If he made the evening ugly after everyone left, I would show the world why. Garrett looked at the red dot. His eyes moved around the circle, stopping on Paige in the hall and Trevor in his chair. He said that if we made the night public, we would regret what the complete record showed. That was the sentence I needed. I took the phone and ended the recording at 8:59. 53 minutes and 7 seconds sat in the shared house album. Garrett went upstairs. He did not shout. He did not touch Trevor. He did not ask anyone to defend him. The party lasted another hour because I refused to let his silence close my house. By midnight, I believed the camera had given me exactly what I wanted. Trevor stayed after the other guests left. Mallory joined us on a video call while we sat at the dining table with Garrett's full recording open on my laptop. The timeline looked long and untidy. Chairs moving, guests eating, people repeating themselves. Trevor said nobody would watch 53 minutes. I agreed. Public truth needed pace. We started the edit after his first hard line. I removed the early house tour and the moment when the phone rested on the mantel. I cut Garrett's first request to stop because his voice sounded too reasonable. The second request disappeared with a long pause. I removed Paige standing in the hall and Trevor asking whether he should end the roast. The last cut took the most care. I kept my warning that I would show the world what Garrett did after the party. I removed the warning itself. Then I placed his answer directly after Trevor called him a failure in his own home. 41 seconds remained. In my version, Trevor spoke. Guests laughed. Garrett looked tense. Then he warned us that we would regret it. Mallory said the clip was brutal in the best way. Trevor asked whether his employer might see it. I told him confidence looked good everywhere. We exported the short version at 12:26. I deleted the full recording from the shared house album and emptied the trash. Trevor removed the copy from his phone after I sent him the edit. Mallory watched me clear the file list and said the long version was dead weight anyway. The archive warning appeared for less than a second. It said the first home record remained protected. I closed the window without reading the smaller line. Garrett's car was gone when Trevor left. A message said he would stay with his sister Renee and return for clothes later. I posted the clip at 8:10 the next morning. The caption said Garrett had heard one honest opinion about himself and responded with a threat. I added that women were often expected to hide a husband's anger to protect his reputation. Trevor posted the same edit and said some men needed to learn their place. The first 10,000 views arrived before lunch. By dinner, the number was above 200,000. Comments called Garrett weak, jealous, and dangerous. Someone found his restoration company. The office received emails asking why it employed a man who threatened his wife on camera. Garrett did not post. He sent me one private request to remove the clip and publish the complete recording. I told him the complete recording had been deleted because no one needed 53 minutes of excuses. He replied with the exact length. 53 minutes and 7 seconds. For a moment, the number bothered me. Then I decided he had memorized it before leaving. Mallory celebrated the reach for the first day. She sent screenshots of larger accounts sharing it, and called the clip my strongest public statement. On the second day, when Garrett's company posted that it was reviewing harassment sent to employees, Mallory asked whether my caption had gone too far. I told her Garrett was hiding behind co-workers because he could not answer the truth. Paige called that evening. She said the clip changed the meaning of the room. She reminded me that Garrett had asked to stop 3 times and that I had ordered him to continue filming. I said Paige had moved into the hall before the final exchange and could not speak for everyone. She said her own phone had kept recording from the hall. I accused her of collecting private moments for Garrett. Paige answered that I had made the moment public first. Then she ended the call. Trevor enjoyed the attention longer. A podcast page asked him for a reaction. He said he had only answered a question honestly and that Garrett's anger proved the roast was accurate. His follower count rose. He began referring to the clip as his video, even though my husband had held the camera. At work, my director asked whether the county logo appeared anywhere on my profile. I removed it. He also asked whether the threat had been reported to police. I said I was considering every option. That answer opened a new version of the story. When Garrett came for clothes, Renee waited in the car. He stood inside the front door and looked toward the small security camera above us before entering. I called that a performance. He asked again for the full clip to be restored publicly. He said people were contacting junior employees who had not attended the party. I told him the internet had seen his own words. If his company suffered, he should consider why the sentence sounded threatening without help. Garrett said context was not help. It was the event. He did not argue after that. He packed one suitcase and left the house he had spent 14 months repairing. The quiet almost gave me the reaction I had wanted. Almost. That night, a caption file remained in my laptop's recent folder. It contained the auto-generated words from the deleted original. I opened it while looking for the short video's title. The first visible section carried Garrett's question about ending the game. Below, it was my answer telling him to continue. The red timecode beside the text ran without a break. For several seconds, the larger shape came close. A dangerous husband should have sounded dangerous before the final sentence. Garrett sounded tired. I sounded organized. Then I closed the file. Captions were not pictures. Tone could still change meaning. The public clip remained the version people had actually watched. I filed for divorce 6 days after the party. My lawyer asked what I wanted first. I said I wanted temporary exclusive use of the house because Garrett's warning had made me feel unsafe. He asked whether Garrett had ever struck me, blocked a door, damaged property, or threatened physical harm before the party. I answered no to each question. Then I said danger did not need a history before it became danger. The clip showed a man staring into a camera and warning his wife that she would regret speaking publicly. My lawyer asked for the full video. I told him the original had been deleted after the social edit and that Garrett had the same short version as everyone else. He wrote that answer down and warned me that a judge would care about context. I said context was the excuse powerful people requested when the visible fact no longer helped them. The request required a written statement. I described the roast as spontaneous. I said Trevor answered a question, and Garrett became threatening when he heard criticism. I did not mention planning the first line at the coffee shop. I did not mention Garrett's 3 requests to end the game. On paper, omission was not the same thing as a false sentence. Garrett called after he received the filing. His voice remained level, which I used as proof that the process had finally made him careful. He asked whether I truly wanted a judge to believe he had threatened violence. I said he had used a threat in a room full of people and then abandoned the home. Garrett said leaving had been the safest choice available after I refused to end the game. I told him safety was not only physical. Then I gave him the accusation he could not deny. For years, he had hidden behind calm and made me carry every hard social moment. He waited until the car to disagree, until mourning to name hurt, and until a document existed before he treated my feelings as real. His silence made me the only person responsible for the temperature of our marriage. Garrett admitted that part. He said he had confused avoiding a scene with protecting us. He had let resentment become documentation because records were easier than conflict. The admission was real. It did not give me the house, so I kept going. Garrett offered one final choice. If I withdrew the statement that I feared violence and posted the full context, he would keep the divorce private and ask his company not to respond publicly. He did not ask me to save the marriage. He asked me to stop turning him into a danger I knew he was not. I refused. Correcting the post would make me look like the liar after millions had already chosen my version. That evening, I recorded a short update from the living room with the restored brick behind me. I told viewers that leaving an unsafe marriage was harder when the other person controlled property, money, and the private version of every event. I did not name the temporary request, but the blue door appeared over my shoulder, and people understood that the house was part of the fight. Comments praised me for standing my ground. I read them while sitting in the chair Trevor had used during the roast. Garrett's company sent another request that I stop directing viewers toward its employees. I did not answer. Public pressure was not harassment when the public arrived at its own conclusion. Trevor became less useful once the hearing was scheduled. He asked me not to describe the roast as our plan. He said he had expected a joke, not a fight over property. I reminded him that he had helped edit the clip. He answered that I controlled the laptop. At 11:48 that night, I sent the message that later mattered most. I told Trevor it was a shame Garrett had not hit him because then the house would be guaranteed. Trevor answered that I should not write things like that. I deleted the thread from my phone. The message still existed in the county-issued device backup because I had used the same account to answer Mallory during the party week. Mallory stopped returning calls after my lawyer requested a statement. I sent her 3 messages in one afternoon. The last one stayed unread. Paige answered once. She said she would tell the truth if asked and would not coordinate it with either spouse. During hearing preparation, my lawyer asked me to walk through the 41 seconds without using words like cruel or weak. He wanted only observable actions. Trevor spoke. Garrett filmed. Garrett made a warning. I repeated that order until it sounded complete. When my lawyer asked what happened immediately before the warning, I said people had been laughing and Garrett had become embarrassed. That was observable enough for me. He asked again whether Garrett had requested the game to stop. I said I could not remember every sentence from a crowded party. The answer sat badly in the quiet office, so I opened the viral clip on my phone and let the view count fill the silence. My lawyer received Garrett's evidence list 2 days before the hearing. It named an original 53-minute media file, an archive activity record, and message exports. He asked whether there could be another copy. I said Garrett was repeating the same night in a longer format because he had nothing else. The night before court, Trevor posted that he hoped both sides found peace. He removed my name from the caption. I called that caution, not desertion. At 10:30 on Tuesday, I sat beside my lawyer with the 41-second clip ready. Garrett sat across the aisle with Meredith Shaw. He did not look angry. His eyes moved toward the courtroom screen, then the judge, then the small red icon beside the file name on Meredith's laptop. My lawyer played the short clip first. Trevor called Garrett a failure. Guests laughed. Garrett warned that we would regret making the night public. The room heard exactly what the internet heard. Meredith stood and asked to play the preserved original from the beginning. I nodded before my lawyer could object because 53 minutes gave Garrett 53 minutes to look weaker. The first minute showed our blue front door and guests entering. Garrett's voice named the rooms while I directed him where to stand. The red time code moved in the corner without a jump. At minute 24, he placed the phone on the mantel. My whisper to Trevor came through beneath the music. I heard myself remind him not to soften the answer because I needed Garrett's real reaction. Trevor asked what would happen if Garrett left. My answer followed. We would call him offended. Anger would make better footage. My fingers closed around the edge of the table. The game began. Meredith did not skip. The court heard Garrett's first request to stop and my order to keep filming. It heard the second request after someone called him a tenant in his own house. It heard me tell him to move closer and center Trevor's face. Paige's objection remained in the background. Trevor's first attempt to end the roast remained too. At the third request, Garrett offered to send everyone home and discuss every complaint privately. I answered by taking the phone, turning it toward Trevor, and putting it back into my husband's hands. The red timecode kept moving. Then came the part I kept. Trevor's hardest line. Garrett's face. My threat to post whatever happened after the party. Only then did Garrett say we would regret what the complete record showed. The sentence no longer sounded like violence. It sounded exact. I tried to tell the judge that a long humiliation could make any man appear controlled for the camera. Meredith did not argue with my interpretation. She opened the message export. My sentence about wishing Garrett had hit Trevor appeared beside its time and backup source. Trevor's answer asking me not to write such things sat below it. My lawyer stopped taking notes. The judge said the edited clip did not support the safety claim once its full context was visible. My request to exclude Garrett from the house was denied, and the divorce continued without the temporary possession order I wanted. Garrett did not smile. Outside the courtroom, I accused him of giving the internet another reason to attack me. Meredith said Garrett had released nothing publicly. The archive copy had gone only to counsel and the court. Paige posted her own continuous recording that afternoon. Her angle began in the hall after the first laugh, so it did not contain the whisper. It did show Garrett asking to stop, my orders to continue, and Trevor trying to end the roast before I pushed him forward. Paige wrote that she had stayed quiet in the room and would not stay quiet while silence was used as proof against someone else. The short clip lost its power within hours. Accounts that had mocked Garrett replaced it with side-by-side edits. Trevor posted a statement saying the question and escalation were my idea. He described himself as another person pressured into the performance and removed his own edited upload. Garrett never joined the argument. 5 parts of my life changed without needing another hearing. Garrett returned to Hawthorne Lane, and I rented a furnished apartment beside a 6-lane road. Our shared discretionary account was restricted while the divorce and Garrett's damage claim moved forward. Mallory stopped answering, Paige blocked me after posting her recording, and our college group removed me from every dinner thread. Trevor called himself manipulated, blocked my number, and let strangers believe he had never enjoyed holding the better man role. The county placed me on administrative leave because the officer responsible for public accuracy had published a deceptive edit while making a sworn claim about its meaning. I had believed control belonged to the person who cut first. Garrett's silence had wounded our marriage, and even the uncut recording did not make him innocent of every year he withdrew. But I used that real failure to build a false threat. I needed 41 seconds to be stronger than the room, the house, and every minute I removed. On the evidence screen, the red timecode keeps moving long after my husband stops asking me to end the game.